Bishop speaks to U.S. workers. The following is based on an editorial that appeared in the November 4, 1983, issue of The Militant. October 27. In the first such airborne invasion since Vietnam, nearly 2,000 U.S. Marines and Army Rangers stormed the tiny island of Grenada October 25. This naked and unprovoked aggression reveals the hatred of the U.S. ruling class for the example Grenada set in 1979, when it became the first black country in the world to carry out a socialist revolution. As news of the criminal invasion spread, an outcry was heard around the world. Millions saw it as an ominous prelude to new U.S. military intervention against Nicaragua, the Salvadoran liberation fighters, and others struggling for freedom in the region. The invasion of Grenada was preceded by the tragic developments that led to the assassination of Grenadian Prime Minister Maurice Bishop and many other top government leaders. These events have been deeply felt by workers in the United States, especially blacks. The Grenadian people, like their sisters and brothers in Cuba and Nicaragua, demonstrated that it is possible even for a tiny, oppressed nation to throw off the racist, imperialist boot of Washington, to take power from the hands of the capitalists and landlords, and to establish a government that fights for the interests of working people. The U.S. rulers don't want us to know the truth about the gains they are destroying in Grenada. So they now claim Grenada was a terror island run by Cubans, not Grenadians, and that it was being built up as a Cuban army base and terrorist training camp for Havana. But it is Washington that has turned Grenada into a U.S. Army base to terrorize the Grenadian people and roll back what they won through their revolution. 6,000 U.S. troops now occupy the Black Island in an outrageous violation of that nation's right to self-determination and independence. What are the gains the Grenadian Revolution achieved? In 1979, the Grenadians overthrew Eric Gary, a U.S.-backed tyrant, and replaced him with a government of workers and farmers, led by the New Jewel movement. That government, headed by Bishop, mobilized the toiling masses for 4.5 years to overcome the legacy of poverty, hunger, and illiteracy left by centuries of colonial and capitalist rule. In the short time since 1979, the Grenadian government slashed on 3. Employment from 49% to less than 14% of idle land were made available to small f. Thousand of acres women were given EUALRIHTS honors for cooperatives. Nutrition, adult educatio and IT and vast program o healthcare, form the lives of the Grenadian race asses as orgaza to translished all over the island. People. Democratic counts were established. The Grenadian government asked for Belfi compelish these projects P. Rom the world to a can sabotage Grenada, se tun re-one acted the appeal, refused aid, Cuban government in COETOA_NS from other nations. The construction workers doc. ATHI immediately responded by offering struggling, impoverished naughty NCNLCIS, and other assistance to the TDS economic, diplomatic, and MT Washington, M. and Whittle, stepped up for its people to back FFFR ithal threats. Against Grenada to TLY to it was THFU OMEIR revolution resal of THNJ to retreat from the ETHU. Leadership and Grenadian people. RR course at earn THTH Tmbinalism and the profudi. Fear and hatred of US world. An admiration of workers all over the taking advantage of the devastating B Army officers overthrew the BFLW October I-9 when Grenada. Gan ordered OS Fleet EIS op-ed New Jewel government invade Grenada. En route to Lebanon to change course and in the first HRs of the invasio W equals lead success. This quick. NH Ashington boasted that it was a new dot by Cuban construction wo, KR Songed, A.S. The Grenadian people, PAR fought back. By the second the island helping to build a Meetin Ridger had to go on television Secret of Defense cast Rupsk Froajot more resistance than an ad tunnel US troops were 1M the 82nd Airborne DIVE expected. Another 800 US the front lines of the El Zion, were rushed to Grenada. Workers. Is stance to the Stopped. A CBS TV report. 0TB invaders were the heroic IOQTR-1E2 when they attack equals said the U.S. Marines _S troops, HACANS at the port site. It at the 21JJE re then a day to overeat, JTP by aircraft and heavy of re-AME, the U.S. defense to fewer than 700 Cubans. SHIOFONE stance where fighters were PJNT said th re were still one he CUBQG out agamst the invahad 80 vement announced. Lao.w at WTLWD. Earlier the gov equals octave.er2 that the Cuban sea arrow to the invasion. On 0x. Claimed its decisions onto 11E1P repel en authority esque, 8/25 President Fidel, the one pending invasion ask 0TBA to send aid to this AO ERNT responded THA. ACC, RDMG to radio H tele unte VLLLB, political and military T it was unpossible to ACAR the larb time light utilizing of a pro reasons. That were APSO radio station reported unched resistance. Castro said that those CU4 R 1 bands in Grenada should remain at their posts of work and should defend themselves if attacked by invading forces, despite the chilling of relations between Cuba and Grenada. Radio Havana announced later that day, as the invasion was underway, that the U.S. invaders had taken Cubans hostages and demanded that all other Cubans surrender. The chief of the Cuban personnel indicate THYWAL.D not surrender under any circumstances and that they awaited instructions from theater commander-in-chief, Fidel Castro. The Cuban government wired back immediately, "We congratulate your heroic resistance. The Cuban people are proud of you. Do not surrender under any circumstances." The Cubans in Grenada responded, "Commander-in-Chief, we will carry out your orders and we will not surrender." J. Patria Omuerd. The following morning, at a pre-dawn news conference, Castro declared, "The valiant Cuban construction workers have written a beautiful page in history and waged a battle for the small countries of the world against imperialist military aggression. They have also fought for the Americas and for their own homeland, as if there in Grenada they were defending the first trenches of the liberty and sovereignty of Cuba." Castro also reported that the Cuban government had taken emergency steps prior to the U.S. invasion to prevent it. It had appealed directly to U.S. diplomatic personnel and offered to cooperate in any way possible to safely evacuate North Americans and other non-Grenadines so as to avoid violence and intervention. Washington spurned this proposal for peace, and never even reported it to the American people because the U.S. rulers had already decided on their criminal aggression, regardless of the loss of life suffered by U.S. citizens, Grenadines, or Cubans. The staggering military force sent against the 110,000 people of Grenada includes 6,000 U.S. Marines and Army Rangers backed up by AC-130 airplane gunships and a dozen warships, including the aircraft carrier Independence, with some 70 combat planes aboard. In addition, 300 troops have been sent in by the island nations of Barbados, Jamaica, Antigua, St. Vincent, St. Lucia, Dominica, and St. Christopher Nevis. Grenada has an army of only 1,200, and a few thousand militia members. The invasion was kept secret from the American people until it was 4 hours underway. President Reagan then held a news conference, defending the aggression by claiming that American lives are at stake, that several East Caribbean nations had called on Washington to act, and that the United States had to assist in a joint effort to restore order and democracy on the island of Grenada. The idea that this murderous assault had anything to do with protecting the U.S. students was immediately denounced by the Chancellor of 5. The medical school himself, Dr. Charles Modica. He reported that prior arrangements had been made with the U.S. State Department and Canadian authorities to peacefully remove the students. The invasion plans were kept secret from him. If anyone were hurt in the assault, he declared, Reagan should be held accountable. The order and democracy U.S. Marines are bringing the Grenadian people, law and order, said Secretary of State George Shultz, reminds one of the order brought to black communities in the United States in the rebellions against racist oppression during the 1960s and 1970s. Law and order at the point of a bayonet, or inflicted by club swinging, trigger happy cops. The fact is, Reagan, in total violation of Grenada's sovereign right to self-determination, has invaded the island nation to wipe out the working-class law and order conquered over the past 4.5 years by the Grenadian people, under the leadership of the New Jewel movement. The kind of law and order where the needs and interests of the toiling masses come first, where their rights are enforced against the tiny minority that owns the banks, businesses, and landed estates. When a sharp dispute split the New Jewel movement leadership several weeks ago, culminating in the overthrow of the bishop-led government and the assassination of central leaders of the revolution, Washington seized on this giant blow to maximize the damage it could do to the revolution in Grenada and worldwide. An international disinformation campaign was swiftly organized to confuse, disarm, and disrupt the workers' movement on a world scale in the face of these tragic events. News stories flourished about Bishop being ousted by hardliners and Marxists because he was allegedly not moving fast enough in the construction of a socialist society. The Cub and Soviet governments were charged without a shred of proof with organizing the anti-Bishop campaign, his murder, and the overthrow of his government. When a new military council declared it was replacing the Bishop-led government, the imperialists tried to portray it as Marxist. The goal was to on the MMDS of working people as to what genuine Marxism stands for. The government and Communist Party of Cuba issued a major statement October 20 answering these lies, setting straight Cuba's role in the Grenada events, and clarifying for the world what genuine Marxism, communism, stands for. Explaining that on principle they had not intervened at all in the Grenada events, the statement declared that Bishop was among the political leaders who most New Jersey yet sympathy and respect among our people. O doctrine, _no NN1PLE, or positron held up as revolutionary, and no internal division justifies atrocious proceedings like the physical elimi. 6. Nation of Bishop and the outstanding group of honest and worthy leaders killed. FD the imperialist invasion of Grenada and the danger o. 1T Sprea MG throughout Central America and the Caribbean poses a major challenge to the U.S. labor movement. How should it respond? A criminal example of what not to do was given by the OFLO 1 LOM of the AFL-CIO. On October 20, in the wake of the ASES 1, Athlon of Bishop, the AFL-CIO RIL.ASEA statement aimed at PROV1 DMG labor cover for Reagan's impending 10N. Shedding crocodile tears for T. Elam. B1 Shop, the statement TN falsely charged his government W1T. Demal of Huan and T8 Umo GHTS it called his overthrow by M1 Hurry figures a communist purge. Con Enud, the AFL-CIO calls upon the democratic governments and private institutions of the civilized world to take every possible action to castigate and condemn the lawless military regime. Everyone in the labor movement opposed to U.S. intervention should repudiate this treacherous statement, made not in the interests of U.S. workers, but U.S. big business and its government. The best way to do so is to join immediately in the protests demanding that U.S. troops be withdrawn from Grenada. There is a second task of Unionists and all PPO_nance of them vastin. Drawing the lessons of the Grenadian Revolution in order to strengthen the working class struggle to take power in the United States and around the world. Reagan's Marines and bombers cannot draw blood the G1G and T1C impact that revolution has had within the UNELT DSTTE, a Spec 1 ally among blacks and on a world scale. Nor can the one Banas erase the enormous contribution the fallen Grenada leaders made to the process of forging an international Marxist leadership capable of leading the proletariat to power. Getting out the truth about what the workers' and farmers' government in Grenada has meant, its gains, the challenges 1T faced and the defeats it suffered, is vital to deepening the stigma of U.S. workers along the ADH charted by our sisters and there's Riada. Advancing that fight, for the socialist revolution Dead States, the fight already begun by the comrades of Grenada, Nicaragua, and Cuba is the highest tribute that can be paid to the martyred New JEL-led, Grenadian workers and farmers, and the Cuban construction workers who have fallen in combat for that goal. Long live the Grenadian Revolution. US out of Grenada, bring the troops home now. 7. Maurice Bishop speaks to US workers. The following speech by Maurice Bishop, Prime Minister of Grenada, was given June 5, 1983, to an audience of over 2,500 people at Hunter College in New York City. It was originally printed in the July 15, 22, and 29, 1983, issues of The Militant. The speech has been slightly abridged. Transcription and editorial preparation were done by The Militant. Thank you very much for that very warm welcome, sisters and brothers, comrades all. May I start out by bringing to you warm fraternal greetings from the free people of revolutionary Grenada. May I also right in the very beginning say how very, very pleasant it is to be back in New York among you, to be in this great hall, where there are so many hundreds of our sisters and brothers. That is going to bring a great deal of pleasure to our free people, and I will certainly report your warmth, your enthusiasm, and your revolutionary support for our process when I return. I would also like to place on the record our deep appreciation for the people responsible in Hunter College for lending us this facility this evening. We are here among friends. But looking around, there are two people here who are right now representing their countries at the United Nations, people who are involved in liberation struggles, who are struggling for freedom for their peoples. It's very important right at the beginning, sisters and brothers, that we acknowledge the presence of Dr. Zedi Terzi, the representative to the United Nations of the Palestine Liberation Organization, the PLO. R. Terzi can be assured as always that the people of Palestine and their SLE authentic representative, the Palestine Liberation Organization, will always have the full support of the fraternal people of Grenada. And there is another liberation movement whose representative is present among us. And this one too has been in the news quite a lot recently. Contrary to what some people have been trying to pretend, that this particular Hbirat, an organization is willing to take the struggle to the highest stge, and GHTM, the capital city of the racist apartheid country of South Africa, AMB went off. The African racists who have spent so much time inventing all sorts of mjmas ways of oppressing the people of South Africa, the 8. Black majority, are now discovering that in common with all of the national liberation movements around the world that are forced to move to the highest stage of the struggle, the African National Congress is also willing to make that step. In saluting the Deputy Permanent Representative of the ANC to the United Nations, let us ask him to bring back to his people, to bring back to his organization, to bring back to Oliver Tambo, to Nelson Mandela, whose spirit is here with us, to bring back the love, the respect, the concern, the admiration, and the fraternal feelings of all of us, Brother David Ndaba. The last time I had the opportunity, sisters and brothers, comrades, of being in New York, and addressing our Grenadian nationals, other people from the Caribbean and Latin America, and of course the people of the United States, was 4 years ago. Since those 4 years have passed, a lot has happened in our country. A lot has happened MTE world. And one of the reasons that we have come to the United States is to share our experiences of the last 4 years with the people of the United States. We were anxious to do this because there has been a major campaign over the last several weeks and months _G from last year in November, with some remarks by the US Vice President in Miami, continuing with more remarks from the Secretary of State, the Secretary of Defense, the Deputy Secretary of Defense, the Admiral of the Fleet, the President himself, as you know, and the loath of March addressing manufacturers, on the 23rd of March the FMAU's, or infamous, Star Wars speech, and more recently AGMT, the JOMT session of Congress on the 27th of April. And in all these, different allegations were made against our country. And therefore we were particularly happy, comrades, to obey the opportunity of an invitation from TransCA, the organization based in Washington that has been doing lobbying for Africa and the Caribbean. We were invited to come to address their 6th annual Inner Last MGHT, and that was a very successful event. We want to publicly thank Trans-Africa once again for making this visit possible. The Congresso al Black Caucus, too, was it, TVLVEDSC_, sponsor of this visit, and we also want to place our appreciation for this on their court. And if anyone has any doubts at all about the Gromg Stran F the black vote, and of the increasing influence of Afro-Americans this country, I want to let you know that it was precisely because of the PRS years THT were brought by our friends in the Black Caucus that a visa was eventually granted for the visit. Of course, we set ourselves other objectives for the visit. These included the very important objective of TRYMG to deepen and strengthen the people-to-people relations that have always existed between our two countries, Grenada and the United States. At the level of the people. 9. TRHS never been any problem. We have always had excellent relations with the people of the United States. In fact, in some years more American tourists come to our country than the entire population of our country. And if we go around and take a careful count, we may well discover that there are more Grenadians living in the United States than the whole population of Grenada. And on top of that, there are several Americans who reside permanently in our country. And there is a medical school in Grenada where over 700 young Americans are earning their right to become doctors. So from our point of view, clearly, bad relations do not make sense. From our point of view, the need to ensure that even more American visitors come to our country every year is a critical and burning need. And the OPJ, opportunity. Therefore, to speak directly to the people of the United States is a very important opportunity. We also st an objective of trying to make contact with as many sectors of American society as we could during this visit. And to this end, there have been several meetings this past week with congressmen and with other influential people in the society. We have attempted over this period, also, to try to talk to as many people from the media as we could reach. That objective has gone quite well. Her objective that we had was to use the period to deepen our relations with some of our closest friends in the United States, with our Black American sisters and brothers, with our Grenadian nationals, with those progressive forces right across the United States who have given SOMCH support unstintingly, to those who lead and are hard workers. 10. Friendship societies and the solidarity committees. We were very anxious to speak to the sisters and brothers, to express our appreciation for the hard work that they have done, and to give them some idea as to what we are. OMGATISTTMEM Grenada. That objective also has gone well. Another objective was to try yet again to establish some form of official contact, an official dialogue with the government of the United States. We, of C.ers, cannot decide which government is going to be in power in the United States at any given moment in time. That is a matter or the PEO the United States. We believe it is extremely important for us to mamtam normal 1 THD1. Ria ian so that we are able to conduct proper IAOG MACTVTHZED fash HH. 1. Ion wit W Omaver happens to be in power at a part JKOAR time. The question of ideology ID.FFI. F. ICIRances, the question of different paths 0 socio-economic and PRFAJD1 RTILO lik evolvement, the question of GOIRHST:/EDF SGAT GIC consensus S and whatnot, is really there is no established ECI analysts. The fact of the matter is, if basis on which relations can ASM or old G dalagi, then there is no leave it is in the interests of both RR, attained in an effective way. We be Grenada to have normal relatio be petwaples of the United States and of NSE in our two governments. 10. We believe it is important because too much is at stake re. Many of our nationals live in this country. And too many immense citizens and students live in our country. There is a need for some of mechanism to be established. And that is why we have been struggling so hard to try to get some of the basic norms re-established. Let us exchange ambassadors, we have said. They have rejected that. So we have no ambassador accredited to Washington because they refuse to accept the credentials of the ambassador VE suggested. When they replaced their ambassador after the electoral victory of President Reagan in 1980 and a new ambassador came out in 1981, he was not accredited to Grenada. So we have to talk presumably loudspeakers. In 1981 on 2 occasions I wrote letters to President Reagan - March and again in August. The first letter, a short letter, made the simple, obvious point, look, you are a new president. We, op-ed that a new president you would take a new look at the situation, THTO would be anxious to start off on as good relations as you can WTTH all countries around the world. We had hoped, therefore, that you would want relations normalized. And we went on in THTLE, to make a point that what we are saying is the true bottom ts talago, it ts talks. Therefore, let us get these talks going. We are proposing no agenda with any preconditions. Let us look at all questions. Let us put them all on the table. Let us see what you perceive as our blames, and W will tell you what we perceive as problems. Let us see if the course of those discussions we can narrow down differences so at least the new beginning that is made will be on the basis of mutual understanding with less distrust and less suspicion. No reply to letter. The second letter was August 1981. And this was a very long letter about 12 typed pages. And the reason there were 12 typed pages was not because there were 12 typed pages talking about an agenda. There were 12 typed pages because by that time, the hostile, aggressive course of destabilization against our government by the Ron Reagan administration had been well established. The letter went into the question of the propaganda destabilization. It went into the question of the economic destabilization : We were able to speak about a discrimination that exists against banana farmers in our country. We were able to speak about the attempt to offer money to the Caribbean development on the sole condition that GRENADA be excluded. /LFS, number of these issues including the fact at MPN had organized a financing conference, rice funds are, UJ. Tiona. Airport project, the American Adam Stritland sent. Air FHECC Itals trying to persuade member countries OE to European APC community not to attend that conference. Countries, for example, it is estimated that over 35 million people the 12 to 13 countries are out of jobs 35 million. It is estimated that in the United States there are, perhaps, 12 million people out of work, in Britain, perhaps 4 million people out of work. In all of the developed industrialized countries there is greater and greater unemployment. And as Th1's unemployment goes deeper and deeper into the society, the people who feel the most are the poor and working people. There are massive cuts in social welfare. The cuts are not coming in the arms race. The cuts are not coming out of the arms budget. I understand is to send $3 trillion over 5 years. The mind boggles. $3 trillion is not even 3 billion, which is 3,000 million. But it is 3,000 billion. And if you work out $3 trillion OE, 5 years, you will discover it comes down to a spending of 1.6 billion United States dollars a day. Are swallowing up the money, the people are not benefiting. That CNSTSM the cap-1test world, moreover, has led to a situation where more and more of their countries, especially in 1982, experienced only negative growth. The effect this has had on us, in turn, has been to create a crisis in the 12. Developing world. It is now estimated that our debts exceed $650 billion, that is how much money we owe collectively. And it is not just the amount of money that is owed by one or two well-known cases like Mexico or Argentina where you are talking about staggering debts of over $80 billion. but perhaps over 35 countries in the developing world now owe about $1 billion or more in debts in a context where they are still unable to create the necessary surpluses to repay the debts. Last year $131 billion was spent by the countries of the Third World in just servicing their debts, in just paying the interest. Last year, too, the purchasing power of the countries of the Third World fell again and fell very, very dramatically. It is estimated that over the last 2 years, Third World developing countries lost $85 billion in purchasing power via the credits we lst, via the REA. PFICES for our commodities because the prices keep falling, and VMHTGH interest rates. But on top of that, we are also discovering that is it becoming more and more difficult to engage in trade with the countries of the Western industrialized world. The developing world as a whole in 1955 had 40% of total world trade. But by 1969, that figure had dropped to 25%. In other words, we lost 15% of the world market. Trade is also increasingly difficult for us because of the HTGH tariff barriers. The reality is that aid has also decreased quite dramatically for THRR world countries. Long ago the United Nations set a target that all the developed industrialized countries should aim to provide as aid 0.7% of their gross national product. And so far as I know from the latest figures we have seen, not one single industrialized country has yet attained that target. Collectively they are now GLVLNG only 0.45% of the GNP as aid. In the old days, it was possible to supplement some of the through direct investment. In Latin America, about 40 years ago, 43% of all direct United States investment went to Latin America. But by the beginning of the 1970s, that 43% had dropped to 17%. More and more, because of the influence O1, R2C_OUNTNI_S, and in particular of one country, it is now BECOM.MG virtually impossible to get loans from the International Monetary Fund_D or the World Bank. In fact, we know that there is a hit HST which has been enveloped with countries like Grenada, Nicaragua, Angola, and Mozambique on it. Once any of these countries makes application to the IMF, regardless of how good technically its program TS, the mistruct NS are to try to find all possible ways of blocking those sources of funding. They are forcing more and more third_world count ES to go directly to the international capital market, to the BTG Common BS, to get loans. First of all, you have to have what they call a credit rating, and to get a credit rating you have to go to the same World Bank and not everybody can get a credit rating. But even after you get a credit rat 13. You have to then deal with TH terms and very high GH. TE question of very short repayment and W1 ES rates. H1LE all of TH1S1S go in. Many people in the world HG on, sisters and brothers, there are so old who are going to bed you are unemployed, oh many people in the third world who are JRTGRY every singla MGHT, so many millions not care or feel they can irrate, D whose governments either do e-pound, employment, hunger, malnutrition. And T, MG2. S, LVE that problem. Uncremies and the sins THT10, ISIS, literacy, these are the tri-arcomnated UTHES of the third world while TH. PN. Poor developing count exploit our resources and KTH industrialized countries continue to consider what HEP profits. Uppens to the SWTFB worker Grenada. In Grenada THEA anana FER or a banana we deal with is one called GIE particular transnational corporation who came from Holland ET Industries. Mr. Van Geest was a man flower shop. And the H0 Diegmally, went to England and opened a THNE once covered TH. and M flowers. He eventual heir was more money 1D ships bananas from many, man C. Developed monopoly of transporting works out that for every loaner, BQ tries to the English market. it banana workers and bananas obtained from the sale of bananas, 90 cents goes in one FO armor's share 10 cents and the other 10 cents for all of that labrim or another to Mr. Van Geest and his type. Cation as possible of th or sweat. That will give as good an indi be mila equivalentators and ut yet, sisters and broth. In j justice m the system. Luan has nonetheless can't dl the face of all this the Grenada revo a time when even the bio 04 ar? And to make progress. At backwards last year we GPF reform industrialized nations were growing of the old history FN, OR'd by 5.5%. And coming out G. VE development and retrogression undergrowth, over the last fora, IS/N year after year it was backward grown by over 15%. The revolution cumulatively we have the revolution in Grenada st cent unemployment. Arte from a base under Gary of 49 per Olden, 1 every TWI get a job and 0 PEOPE who wanted to work 7 out of every 10 QOGWOII_IN, 70% unemployment revolution over 22,000 PEOI no, ET a job. Therefore at the dawn of th when we did a CESUS last EWAO anti to work could not find work. Dropped from 49% to 14.2 p 1982, the unemployment rate had in the days of hum. P.cent. Kaingi th economic, political, social, and sirituios 29 years of our people, there was no such devastation of our country and gas a capital investment program, shocked, as a plan. There was no such and therefore he didn't have to IPY because Gary was a mystic corrupt that nobody was willin' nan. But also partly because he was so d unless they send down T&P event to put even 10 cents in his air 10 cents. So in those days we see to see what's happening to an authm called a Public Invest 14 Ment program. And when it got going it was on the basis of very small feeble advances. The last year of Gary, 1978, the capital investment program one was $8 million. The first year of the revolution that figure was doubled to $16 million. The second year of the revolution it was more than doubled again to $39.9 million. The experts were saying that this is impossible, you don't have the resources, you don't have the management, you don't have enough tractors, you don't have any trucks, you don't have enough engineers, you cannot possibly do it. You are only lucky in 1979 when you doubled Gary's. And you are only lucky in 1980 again when you doubled your ON. And then when we went to 1981 and we doubled it again, they srud, we know you has the luck, but something is wrong. And last year in 1982 it went up to over $100 million, and then we gave them the secret, we told them that in a revolution things operate differently than in the normal situation. We have been able to make these accomplishments because in Grenada, consistent with our 3 pillars of the revolution, where the FRRST pillar is our people who are always at the center and heart and focus of all our activities, we are able to mobilize and organize people to cut out waste, to cut corruption, to stamp out inefficiency, to move to planning, to look out for production, to check on productivity, to make sure that state enterprises are not set up to be subsidized but that state enterprises, too, must become viable, must make a profit, and therefore the state sector will have the surplus to bring the benefits. Our people have gladly been pulled into the economic process because our people see the benefits which the revolution has brought them. They understand that when 37 cents out of every dollar is spent on health and education, that means something. They look around and they understand that year after year inflation is being held reasonably in check. Last year it ran at 7% while wages ran at 10%, thus ensuring an overall increase of 3% in the standard of living of all our people. They look around and recognize that year after year production increases. Last year in the state sector, production went up by over 34%. And in the private sector, production also rose. Last year, too, there was a tremendous rise in the export of non-traditional products. The increase in the export of fruits and vegetables last year went up by over 314%, which is a massive increase in a short period. There are also increases in production in areas like flour and clothing, and there was a slight decrease in the area of furniture. At the same time there were some increases in the area of our traditional export crops nutmegs, cocoa, and bananas. Though in the case of nutmegs, there has been a tremendous problem our country has had to face, a great difficulty in obtaining sales for the nutmegs. When you are producing something like nutmegs, which is really meant primarily as a spicing flavor for foods, and when there is a crisis or a recession or what? 15. Ever the fancy name we use th. Food and therefore your tea and people stop putting the spices in the b new megs accumulate our people in Grenada achievements in the broad are underscore not o, li able to see these economic they are able to feel what them which I have derived them, but material way bsen if it's mean to them ma concrete and cause today the to have to spend for one money t at te people of Grenada used they no longer hvet zamp deb when they went to a doctor or a dentist, they now spend cause they now have free healthcare understand that thb more than doubled. Number of doctors the country has for the revolution tc underscore engrafrom arto of one doctor to every 4,000 be our population. Movin roesent arto, f1 doctor for every 700 of there was just one dent rid, actuaten before the revolution where 7 dental clinics in one dioic or the whole country today there are and pet tm cumg1 for our offshore islands of Kariakou. Umqui. Our people understand the education. Because the KNVUE and the benefits of free secondary pass a common intrank exau now tha once their children are able to longer have to wo abu get mto secondary schools, they know workers, for exam, tfmdmgos fees, which for agricultural but not just free s very often underscore imposse i.e. education moving fr education, but effect free university last year f Gary J situation before the revolution where in the ships and they ha p ed t, an opal wnt, abroad on university sch larter s daughter. We moved fro ug's daughter and anotherness revolution, when 109 that situation to the first 6 months of scholarships. Students went abroad on free university our people are more nm. When we say that eduti or gemg to understand what we mean ca onto us slb strategic concern of this one I underscore irration, that education is a have named the year olv ent. That isw, why this year is the year we stand the importance of BRIIC and academic education. We under consciousness, of promoting ng education o our people, of raising their at the same time given th. Worker educti on classes in the workplace, wt, h skills training, and urine, cadel dlc education. Providing them and are now able to do GTOs who are not able to read and to fli. So. The establishment of th program in early 1980. Center for Popular Education Grenada was reduced to 2, WTTHM 1 year the illiteracy figure in UNESCO, the United Nations FE0 the entire population. And have less than 5% illit with education, says if you, be fact is, that while you do not have an illiteracy problem. Since problem of functional R has now been removed, there is still the CPE program has started. NF and therefore the second phase of our people at home call the night HPASE of adult education, which hours each, in other words SIXSCHOOS, for 2 nights a week 3 hours a week agricultural workers. 16. Farmers in our country, clerical workers, factory workers, unemployed youth who have dropped out of school, more and more of them are now into OEO_F the 72 centers operating around the country, BNNGMG that's MGHTS whole education to our people. I real want the sisters and brothers to understand just how difficult TH1's task 1_S. If you can reflect back on the normal daily habits of the average agricultural warrior throughout the 50s, 60s, and 70s, and to a great extent STTLL today, if we are to be frank and honest, we understand how difficult it is to run an adult education program. The average agricultural worker OES to work early in the morning, goes home the afternoon, does a little back gardening, then maybe heads to the rum shop to play some dominoes or sit down to talk with the partner. To ask such an agricultural worker now to come out twice a week to a night school and for 3 hours to sit down and go through a phonal educational course is really asking a lot. During the very first experience we had with the illiteracy phase in 1980, I remember holding several meetings from time to time with the CPE mobilizers and CPE educators, and over again those comrades would say that the problem is you cannot persuade the sisters and brothers to be consistent. Some nights when they're reaching a house and they knock on the door, and they say, "Where is your husband?" She say, "Not here." And when you look under the bed, you see the man hiding. In other words, it is a very difficult task. But it is a task we are trying to accomplish. What is the background and tradition we have had? It is a background and tradition that has, generally speaking, worshipped materialism. It is a background and tradition that has meant that because of the ravages of colonialism, our people have always seen themselves as transients. Our people have always had a visa mentality. And the whole point was to catch the next boat or plane to go abroad. Coming out of the colonial experience and fed daily all of the rubbish that we are fed through the newspapers, the radios, and the televisions, where they are proclaiming the virtues of materialism. Where they are proclaiming the importance of every single person having a video, and having the latest kind of radio that only came out 6 months ago, not to mention the newest kind of shampoo. That kind of thing feeds consumerism, feeds economism, and helps to hold a society back. In our country, many people have as a sole aspiration the need to have a motor car. The fact that a motor car means foreign exchange earnings have to go out because we don't produce motor cars, that it means that more money has to be spent on gas, these things are not so easily explainable because of the political education that is daily taking place through the imperialist media. The reason the people of Vietnam are quite content and happy that virtually every citizen can ride around Vietnam on a bicycle is in part B. 17. Cause they have not been but if we ask our people to to econ up and decadent values. A problem. In Grenada, it's up a cycle misted, of course, that is mountain and bicycles really ule problem because Grenada is one big but the point I'm making _nt work. Strategy that we have under sisters and brothers, is the nature of the ductive but to instill new, al-ne, ot only to risk production and pro-road towards creating a new UESTN our people. As we struggle on the what we know will become man and a.nw Oman, living a new life, in habits, the old prejudices, ea_euct iltsatan, the old culture, the old of the new. That is a straightways air struggling against the shoot single eye of our lives. Glad that we have to resolutely wage every but it is much easier for them to ax uoie to make those sacrifices. It is which they have not been in thphb impostance of doing these things that for the first time made. Allah it of domg because now they know stand that what they p out on ts are coming. Our people now unil care or free educatio, I come back, whether through free wi the free milk distry 1 number, f jobs created. Small island like Grenada, 73 program or country last year, a very single month to over 50 pounds of MTLK were distributed freeton. People, nearly half of the populace 17 last 2, under the house. 240 individuals benefited UD program our country, over our country are entitled TAER is pro, the poorest workers ru.fs, to fix the floors to make Owen to rep their houses, to fix the while he's trying to study, and see that ruin do s not fall on a child worker, the worker then the maintenance are given to the a month out of his wages pys over 6 years at the rate of $5 if he had gone to a bank d Barclays, the first thing mr oct, let us say on the door of mr collateral. And maybe if HRKs would ask him is, where is yo san say, look, no CLRSD at byword, he put out his still eothas able to fmd some kala alu even if he got past that word anoer hurdle that he'd havr somehow or the other, there is ed alone could be only over e to go over. Because then he discovers dollar rest over 12 months w year. A $1,000 loan at 12.5% have onabth.l that means that just, comma, a mon, hgi repayment of over an n. E to afford it? No agricultural worker would d that isy tota th. Revolution is about bika se equals and cultural workers understand what the rifi fopal understand that iva colon lt the w.8 of the revolution. More l made t? Solve these problems of their basic needs, attempts Dion's T colon pipe-borne water, RFLW equals ODA 500,000 gallons parts of TH time. Before the revolution. GMTO homes of our granny country, pipes had actually, many homes and in many rusted up because water had not. 18. Passed there for years. The pipes just stayed there and corroded. The people understand what it means when electrification is brought to their villag. The people understand what it means when they know that by the DE of next year we WLLL have doubled the electricity output and capacity our country, and therefore more people will have the possibility of using electricity. 80% of the lowest paid workers in our country no longer pay any income tax at I. The e-workers take home all their money. Old age pensioners had theatre pence 10 and increased by 10% last year and this year it is going up again by 12.5%. Our people know that last year some $43 million ESPNT on the International Airport project alone, and another $40 million will be spent on that project this year again. They know that last year over 49 miles of feeder roads were built, feeder roads being the roads that connect the farmers to the main roads, so now the produce can be brought out safely. They know that apart from these 49 miles of feeder roads that 15 miles of farm roads were built, and 14 new miles of main roads were also built, totaling, therefore, something like 78 new miles of roads in our country last year alone. Our people, therefore, have a greater and deeper understanding of what the revolution means and what it has brought to them. They certainly understand very clearly that when some people attack us on the grounds of human rights, when some people attack us on the grounds of constituting a threat to the national security of other countries, our people understand that is foolishness. They know the real reason has to do with the fact of the revolution and the benefits that the revolution is bringing to the people of our country. The real reason for all of this hostility is because some perceive that what is happening in Grenada can lay the basis for a new socio-economic and political path of development. They give all kinds of reasons and excuses, some of them credible, some utter rubbish. We saw an interesting one recently in a secret report to the State Department. I want to tell you about that one, so you can reflect on it. That secret report made this point, that the Grenada Revolution is in one sense even worse, I'm using their language, than the Cuban and Nicaraguan revolutions because the people of Grenada and the leadership of Grenada speak English, and therefore can communicate directly with the people of the United States. I can see from your applause, sisters and brothers, that you agree with the report. But I want to tell you what that same report said that also made us very dangerous. That is that the people of Grenada and the leadership of Grenada are predominantly black. They said that 95% of our population is black, and they had the correct statistic, and if we have 95% of predominantly African origin in our country, then we can have a dangerous appeal to 30 million black people in the United States. Now that aspect of the report, clearly, is one of the most sensible. 19. But, sisters and brothers, how do we evaluate other sides of their report? Like when they say that Grenada violates human rights. When they say to us, how come you have detainees, what about the press, what about elections? When they say to us, where are your elections, they don't come around at the same time and say to their friends in South Africa, where are your elections? When they say to us that elections must be held, and if you don't have elections you can't expect support, and unless you have elections we can't give you the normal treatment, we say, Salvador Allende of Chile. Salvador Allende of Chile was elected in September 1970 by the people of Chile. Allende did not take power through a revolution. Within 24 hours of his election, Richard Nixon, Kissinger, and Helms sat down and devised their plan, Operation Make the Economy Scream. And even in the first 3 months after Allende was elected, before he was inaugurated as president, they already tried to kill Allende once. They couldn't even wait for him to be formally inaugurated. Allende did not form a militia. Allende did not grab any land or property. Allende had no political detainees. Allende did not crush the press. He did not close down the parliament. He did not suspend the constitution. He played by every rule they wrote. But they killed him still. These people understand very well that a revolution means a new situation. A revolution implies a fracture. It implies a break with the past. It implies disruption of a temporary character. Revolution means that the abuses and excesses of the violent, reactionary, and disruptive minority have to be crushed so that the majority's interests can prevail. No revolution that does not have a dislocation can be called revolution. That is an impossibility. When the British had their revolution in the 1650s, it took them 200 years to call their first election. When the Americans had their revolution in 1776, it took them 13 years to call their election. In the FRRST week of the American Revolution, 100,000 fled to Canada. Thousands were locked up without charge or trial. Hundreds were shot. And the counter-revolutionaries after the American Revolution had no right to vote. They had no right to teach. They had no right to preach. They had no right to a job. Their land was confiscated without payment. When the falsifiers of history try to pretend that the American Revolution was a Boston Tea Party, it was a very bloody Tea Party. The fact of the matter is, sisters and brothers, if we are to be honest about this question, whenever revolution comes, the same questions fos the letten, of the volution. One question always is, what do you do, the BL, why nu DED? Mun air dot, the criminajs, the ones who propped up the dictatorship. The ones who led to disappearances of our people. The ones who were beating the people, who were killing the people. 20. Different ways. Some people take revolution's answer that question MD shoot them down. That is won them out in the streets, line them and they went into the bush, and answer. Some other people pretend / they shoot them down too. While they were in the bush, them deal with them. I am not past some other people create spectral courts ling judgment on any of these _3 MV. He appetite for any of those the Grenada Revolution DTD not H the humanitarian course. We 3 models. So we took what we say was detain them and treated them _WL. That of the 400 to 500 people, and you know it is highly STGMF can on the 13th of March, not picked up by our masses on Revolution VED in the jail with even a one of these mongoose gang elements that happened is because our scratch on them. And the only re-SFND opposition that a revolution takes people at home understand the PNNCTPEPO ill treatment of anyone, on no revenge, no victimization, no to _retu, ASER people understood regardless of what they have done. It ls. All revolutions the span this something that very often happen in Grenada. Tan us upheaval of the SES-DTDNR on called Epicarode a church-based organization M2 at Grenada, the peaceful rebuke last year on Grenada. They see a allusion. We can understand why. D make these statements we under so when these elements come and min from. Because EY understand only too well where they are co-F. Review our Ongong J, Rose stand that the processes and procedure 01 is ever interfered with for doers. They understand that Grena with for what he writ s. In fact, what he says. No one is ever mteer associate in a construct EI. Today criticism is deeper than LFST law. Of the revolution is that our people also understand at ERDTE so more benefits can come a revolution must survive, must cancel IA. To them. Volution has laid down as a law, that and because of this fact, the re'll be allowed to be involved any nobody regardless of who you W of the government by underscore the F activity surrounding the overt O moves in that direction WTE and violence. And anyone W ruthlessly crushed. THEOPL to have a voice in we believe that it is very important for it. EPOF mass organizations of 0Y is the creaton 0 running theatrophathras. NEWA 0. TT on the national youth R1W Ensragamza our people, the Natona, MRs, the labor unions. Ganization, the farm Rs UMO, and 0S ed a law in 1978, the essential before the revolution, Gatry had underscore PH strike from the Workers of Our Services Act, which took away the NGLT to UT instead we passed a new country. We not only repealed that under which any time in any law recognition of trade unions LLTE that they want to form or workplace 51% of the workers. Mst be recognized by them to join a union of their choice, that human player. Without work before the V not only were the women of our Congeso the most harassed and Vitkalushan, the women of our country those few who were granted timized of any section of our population. Re given those jobs only on the jobs from time to time, many of the, being sexually exploited in rebus is of a sexual favor. Our women. Alf Satum for jobs. 1N was to outlaw sex evict the very first decree of the Revo you return for jobs. Shin and exploitation of our W men I and brothers, the revolut law then and going on from T at, STR, workers in the public sector, of equal passed a law which if to we also then passed another law more pay for equal work for all women. 23. Recently, a maternity leave law. And by this maternity leave law every woman who is pregnant must be granted 3 months maternity leave, 2 months full pay and 1 could be without full pay, and a guarantee of return to employment after the pregnancy. It is because of these laws and because of the new environment in the country that so many women have begun to step forward, have begun to assert themselves, have begun to go out and find new jobs, have begun to get fully involved in production. And that is why so FT_hem have joined their mass organization, so that today, at this POMT MTLME, 1 in every 3 adult women over the age of 16 years is a member of the National Women's Organization. And in this organization, the women are able to experience training in democracy, training in self-rule, training in acquiring a new confidence. Once every 2 months they hold their parish meetings. They are also broken up into groups around the country where, among other things, they conduct political education and provide training opportunities. Once in every 2 years at their Congress, all the women have the opportunity of electing delegates. For 6 months before the Congress, they have the opportunity to discuss the new program for the next 2 years. And then on the day of the Congress, they elect their entire new leadership by a secret ballot. So, within our mass organizations the principle of electorality is already entrenched. And for the people in general, there have been organs of popular democracy that have been built: zonal councils, parish councils, worker parish councils, farmer councils where the people come together from month to month. The usual agenda will be a report on programs taking place in the village. Then there will be a report, usually by some senior member of the bureaucracy. It might be the manager of the Central Water Commission. Or it might be the manager of the telephone company or the electricity company. Or it might be the chief sanitary inspector, or the senior price control inspector. And this senior bureaucrat has to go there and report to the people on his area of work, and then be submitted to a question and answer session. And after that, one of the top leaders in our country, one of us will also attend those meetings, and ourselves give a report, and usually there is question and answer time at the end of that also. And T is they, our people from day to day and week to week, our PARLC, patent 1N helping to run the affairs of their country. And this is not just an abstract matter of principle. It has also brought practical, concrete benefits to our people. I remember a worker parish council in August 1981. The workers were MAURICE that night. They were complaining about the approach to human rights is one, so this concept of democracy and OUPPD the involvement of R that has stress solving these pro-EY and week to week. People in a participatory way FOMYE also raised over and over agam HAV and D one of these read her one. TH Cuba as a SECO won the question of our reattance WIDHNG of detainees and EACRINGs. Every now DTN when TH / AHM say, Soviet and Cubanchans and the press LS film shed, UWI danger satellite. H1.NK with Cuba are such that 1 T1s, you hear them say that T1s us to the security of TH reglow. We say first of all that yes, we have what do we say on that's question. Anti and people of Cuba. That arm fraternal relations with the government, true. Th. A matter of fundamental principle. We say secondly that to us LSD ascends why we will always have and there are at least 3 very good reole of Cuba. Good relations with the government F. Caribbean family of NA. The first reason, we see Cuba as PEalism was that they divide. Divisions. One of the greatest curses of co-end centers. They taught us differ region according to different METR pole great play of the fact that why, are ant languages. And then they aching you are French SPE knock. Espan 1 SSPE American SPE, Dutch speaking, UD more recently you are English speaking, NH. Tau HT us to hate EACMGN based on this linguistic no E, OEEY sect to make you, O other. When we were GRO:MGU and we used to be made to go soon all leave that the sun sets only M, N, Earth Y and stand up INDEO.ND they to Queen's Park on the Queen re hot and sweaty and TRRE. Stow day and at the end of the day, WHE St. John's Ambulance Brigade P. AD I remember TE. K give us a bun. And faint, they catch you QLC. Hnis went and on the corner MCAEY realized just how deep THDLSFO, HGS to make us into I know the first TLME seducating us and TRYMH. They were ML the extent to WLC. 25. Little Black Englishman is when I arrived in England to study law in 1963. One of my first and greatest experiences, shocking experience, traumatic was when I went somewhere one day. The national anthem started to play, poor little black me, I jump up fast. When I look around, me only one standing up. Every Englishman sitting down. You know like old Sparrow. Sparrow is such a great Grenadian, so articulate. Sparrow points out in one of his best songs that the way they were educating us, they were really educating us to make us into fools. They tell us if you're speaking Dutch, you're the best. If it's English, you're the best, French is the best, Spanish is the best, American is the best. And all of us hating each other. When in fact we are one people from one Caribbean with one struggle and one destiny. We see it therefore as one of our historic duties and responsibilities to pull down these artificial barriers of colonialism and to develop that oneness and that unity that we nearly lost. We believe it is critically necessary to have close relations with all of our neighbors. That is why I have done state visits to Mexico, to Venezuela, to Panama, to Cuba, to Nicaragua, to Ecuador. The reason has been a conscious attempt on the part of this new government to try to build those bridges and to make sure that all of this alienation of the past disappears. The second reason is, we are a non-aligned country. We believe in non-alignments. And to us, non-alignment means that you have the right to choose your own friends. Non-alignment to us means that we have the RINHTN, the duty to diversify and expand our relationships and our SHTPS around the world. Non-alignment to us is not something that implies neutrality. Non-alignment is not meant to make you into a political eunuch that can't speak. Non-IGN is meant to make you speak out loud and clear for what you believe. And we have principles we believe in. There one's also a th1rd reason we will always have relations, warm, fraternal, close relations, with the people and government of Cuba. And thtis our admiration and our respect for the internationalism and the achievements of the Cuban people. Whether they like it or not, Cuba was the first revolution in this hemisphere to have succeed. And when there was no Cuban revolution, there could have been no Nada or Nicaraguan revolution. They like it or not, Cuba was the first country in this hemisphere sophisticare they say alright. They say colon dot, about that but, now base, they won't say tht gam. Thy unications facilities. Discover we have sophisticated th about them. We don't wdnt know any mg so we say, all nght. EOO around the country. If can know where they are. But FL free to M talking about was no more th hat that sophisticated barracks they were struck on the airport site in Imperary SHDS which had been caners who are building the airport RTE. Grenada and the Cuban work they also discovered that Tim TVMG. ERS from a British company called that on the same airport site our work company called Metex H Ed Plessy and workers from a Finnish communications equip and other DWN. They're right now installing the all the things you need TGENAV GAT10 NALAIS, the electronics, etc. MG together. And report functional. Working and live they also then discovered that one T-Law NE dredging from Miami SE Azir an American company called Bould. This famous Milirari BP and TMNE months in Grenada helping to dredge a section of the sea, that this company was hard I. And therefore for T, strip has to pass. A section called NHVM with Grenadian and Cub, NE months TEY _2 W _ air working so I sat to these fellows ill workers, but that's airport. Part on tourism. So we don, TOK _ as you know, Grenada relies in they send you back down Tom MDSMU all again. I don't mind if Maro try to bring a few UTLF you're coming back down toes NDLY, if they will tell you it's S_P Opal. And ME sure they come better than saying sophisti that's international airport. A really become that ludicrous. Tour. As we see it, it is what CT as W_EC it is the gateway to our FU EOFS we see it, it can help UTVS the potential for economic port and EP us to develop our agro. Evop the tourist industry more our FREHFM ustries IAS ruts and vegetables bet more. T can help us to ex severi Grenadian who ha Audi, CE who has ever TR, Akhorn and as anybody here in is 1D. F, N is a literal night Ea will know, seeming to amount of OOV. You have to be a RNNG to Grenada NGHT now remove all EOU sick. And ATT TT co E. E straight into OUN convenience and all at RT will do TS that is why EOHN airport. How are people to fly the Ave Mayday? EY end of disper we and O PTI on this year. Usually every year 6 : CA ed the year of the intern TE Nani, because a tonal all report. Long live the people of South Africa. This greetings from the people of my co : Y own unsi to honor in Omrads, I was addressing a 1000 some tune after 11 o'clock TNAL. Workers' Day and I left 10:00 LS to come to your country be mom to travel more than MTES, no force on earth. UT even if the dis today could have stopped and tar_ice was the me yo ombimd here. OLE, MTY the militant solidari W equals, this uni. : equals dot. ES, our unperialists Rio. MLE, because we Rico. Tie which today could have BGMZE, that will out the cub go equals M Grenada just as 1979. And when I Petwism ad reaction keep saying to us in Grenada. Why do we need OMs? Where are the arms coming from? Why should such a small count whenever Mitzenarls or foreign aggressors land in our count, I will discover how much arms we have, whether we can the dash and where IDE arms came from as we shed their blood on our swai. Your revolution, co-do, has also provided the region an though, world with a living legend with your Gria one and indomitable leader, Fidel I. Castro. Fidel has taught us not only how to fight, but also when to work, how to build socialism, and how to lead our country in a TM of humility, sumsintwi, commitment, ad fin revolutiona, SHLP. Ir importalul to be in revolutionary Cuba at this perlut in world bisitori. Today we can see another crisis in international capitalism. Today one we equals. Idem complaining I dat their supek I fits or fa jing. We can the armed terrorist running towards 2% TB skol. Che they have been providing for their children even that. They have bad to buy ov $500 million. Their WO.WS or Dali finding that jobs one are disappear Nelly. But their more than $33 billion profit on investments. D the world demand that they create all new tension in the world, so I that their economy, which based on war and armament, would once agam flourish. One they are also terrified by the victories of the National Irration movements in Africa, in Asia in the Middle East and right bore in Latin America. They have loo around and they, that today the GGTESI of the people of the region are continuing and to reao new heights LBYL, K at El Salvador and they recognize that while Wile 1T was Cuba, Ankara and LL. And Kreener la tomorrow it will y heal Saj Vado I lap laws 1. I so they have decided to stop up on their arms supply at TBLF 1 equals E. They have decided to scuttle salt UNDT, they -4, sidad to spend this year more than $142 b, J-Lion on ANZA.TLH-time, the invasions which have their ACIOOS with dash gum over the SDA jading with the Monroe J, Octaln, 823. Shaping now to create all now doctrine to plan dash, new bases to strengthen and deepen their ROI that this will crush the rising wave of Nacionalu Bet IP that is sweeping our region and the FLD. Their interventions in TN Panama. In the Dominican Republic, invasions which they have once again to embark OTLA the people of our region. But summitins it is no rely more on CMLLJL, LL.AW the techniques of the use of propaganda destabilization, on the policy of economic isolation. But in each case all of this is meant to lay the basis for a United States organized or backed coup d'état. In 1954, they succeeded in overthrowing Arbenz in Guatemala. In 1973, they succeeded in overthrowing Allende in Chile. But the one lesson that they have never forgotten and will never forget is that in 1961 they failed when they tried at Giron right here in revolutionary Cuba. Today we can hear them setting up their cries against the revolutionary PROCCs in Nicaragua and Cuba. You can hear them talking about human NGHTS, you can hear them calling for elections even though they won't understand that our revolutions are popular revolutions. You can see them encouraging the ultra-leftists in our countries to take violent action against our peoples. Their propaganda has reached the point where, our countries have become electoral issues in the presidential campaign MT at country. And at the same time, as usual, the threats against revolutionary Cuba, the continuation of the criminal economic blockade against revolutionary Cuba, the creation of artificial crisis after artificial crisis. First question of the Soviet troops in October last year, and now the question of so-called refugees at this point in time. All of this is part and parcel of the imperialist campaign to try to defame the Cuban Revolution, to isolate the Cuban people, to try to lay the basis for an Medmvaswan or other form of intervention of your beloved country. But _M Granda we have been using a slogan and that slogan has been same that if they touch Cuba or if they touch Nicaragua, then they touch Grenada too. Comrades, as the people _E who own this region, as the people who NGT these countries, it is for us to decide what we want to do with our our countries. It is for us, the people of the region, to demand whether, or not we want to have military bases on our territory. It is for us to decide whether or not we want other people's planes to fly over our co-NIES. And one of the most contemptuous and arrogant acts of impenism is to presume that in 1980 not only do they have the right to have a base M Guantanamo but underscore that they also have a right to operate military maneuvers on the very soil of free and revolutionary Cuba. We, the people of this region, demand that our region is recognized and respected as a zone of peace. We demand an end to all military task forces and A1R and C patrols of our region. We demand that the people of E region must be free from aggressive military harassment of any military power. We demand an end to the Monroe Doctrine and to the Arthur D. C.T. Army and all other doctrines which are aimed at perpetuating derventlamism or backyardism in the region. There must be an end to attempts to use the so-called peacekeeping apparatus of the organization of A_Menken STAES to militarily intervene in the region, to hold back progressive and patriotic movements. We also call today that THHT ENG to SE, Intermit 10N for all peoples ME region must be recognized and accepted. 34. We today renew our call for the independence of the sister people of Puerto Rico. We today insist that all of the people of the region in the 25 colonial countries which still exist English, Dutch, French, or American territories, we demand the right to independence for the peoples of those countries. We demand that a principle of ideological pluralism will be respected and practiced by imperialist powers. We must have the right to build our processes in our own way, free from outside interference, free from all forms of threats or to force us to accept other people's processes. Today we insist that there must be an end to the invasions, an EOO to the landing by Marines, an end to the gunboats, an end to the Giron, an end to the slaughters and massacres of our Sarnlins, our CHES, and our Allendes. Of long live the Communist Party of Cuba. Long live. Long live Comrade Fidel Castro. Long live the Nicaraguan Valu, John. Long live the S.A. Dinas LL Raon FN, NL. Long live the National Hbirat R. Long live the Socialist World. Long live the GRENADA _Revoyo2. Long live the Mibtant AE/E Cuba, Nicaragua, Grenada, al pie adelante siempre, Atras None, Minister Unison Whiteman, Housing Minister Norris Bain, edu. The new organization secretary of the ORI was Aníbal Escalante, a longtime leader of the Popular Socialist Party, the traditional Moscow Line Communist Party. Escalante abused his position to build up a party and state apparatus increasingly composed of PSP cadres, winking at special privileges and bureaucratic practices. He also started a rumor mill belittling the July 26 leaders. The concrete situation in Cuba was quite different from what developed in Grenada, of course. It should be noted, however, that the Escalante grouping circulated the charge that Castro was refusing to function as part of the collective party leadership. It dismissed the popular support for Castro and other July 26 leaders as signs of a personality. 46. Cult. In March 1962 Castro gave a televised speech pointing to the dangerous growth of bureaucracy, privilege and favoritism fostered by Escalante. The party leadership removed Escalante from HTS post. On Castro's proposal, the procedure for becoming a party member was CND so that nominations would come from assemblies of the candidate's co-workers. This has remained the procedure ever since. A common bourgeois press speculation at the time, echoed by many in the radical movement internationally, was that more hardline Marxists from the PSP had been taking over, pushing aside the more moderate July 26 team. Some groups claiming to be Marxist even lined up with Escalante in the dispute on this basis. A workers' and farmers' government such as that established in Grenada in March 1979 marks a necessary stage in a socialist revolution, consolidating the toilers' power over a reconstructed government and state apparatus. While there are no timetable or recipes for the transition to a workers' state, the revolution WTLL ultimately etherov forward to the expropriation of the capitalists and landlords, or TTWTLL be driven back, allowing the re-establishment of capitalist CLSS rule. In Russia in 1917-18 and Cuba in 1959-60, workers and farmers' governments went forward to the consolidation of workers' states under revolutionary Marxist leaderships. Following World War II, workers' states were consolidated in China, Yugoslavia, and other Eastern-European countries despite Stalinist leaderships had lacked the revolutionary capacities of the Bolshevik and Cuban parts. A year or two following the victorious struggle MST French colonial rule, a workers' and farmers' government came into existence there as well between late 1963 and mid-1965, that government took increasingly radical, anti-capitalist measure against both foreign imperialist and local Algerian holdings. It mobbed the workers and poor peasants to exercise greater control over theatre society and economy. The left wing of the Algerian leadership, led by head of state Ben Bella, publicly declared its intention to follow the course charted by the Cuban Revolution. The Ben Bella group, however, was not a Marxist leadership that of the Cuban, Nicaraguan, and Grenada revolutions. In response to resistance by pro-capitalist forces to the radical course oft, revolution, Ben Bella vacillated and retreated. He did not rely on mob iltsatun of the workers and poor peasants to defend and extend theatre gams. As a result, a clique of officers in the Revolutionary Army, WHTCH had been built in the course of the anti-colonial struggle, Verthra and Bella in June 1965. Gen. Houari Boumediene, who had H1 myself temporarily been associated with the left wing, replaced Ben Bella. The workers and farmers government in Algeria had come eroded out by the time of the I-965 coup, and the takeover did not necessitate the bloody liquidation of the former leaders HTP, Ben Bella was jailed but not executed. The new regime was not a NGHTTST government a 47. La Chile, but sought to dampen popular opposition by claiming to defend certain previous gains and retaining an anti-imperialist posture in foreign policy. Nonetheless, the Algerian workers and farmers government had been overthrown. It was replaced by a radical, bourgeois nationalist regime such as those that have come to power in a number of Middle Eastern, African, Asian, and Latin American countries as a result of the upsurge of the colonial revolution since World War II. The course of the Grenada Revolution since 1979 has been strikingly different from the trajectory of the Algerian workers and farmers government, above all because of the capacities of the Marxist leadership team of Bishop and other NJM leaders. They were deeply influenced by the experiences and lessons learned from the Cuban Revolution and its proletarian internationalist leadership. The Grenada Revolution had not rotted out, nor were the workers and farmers demobilized when the events of this month erupted. That is why the new regime had to slaughter the central core of the leadership and subject the masses to hails of bullets and a shoot to kill, 4-day curfew. That is also why imperialism decided to directly intervene with its own forces. While Washington recognized the serious blow that the revolution had taken, it also recognized that the revolution had not yet been crushed. It is seeking by its own might to hold down the workers and farmers, prevent the re-emergence of a revolutionary leadership, and deal the workers and farmers government a final death blow. Whatever the outcome of the battle between the imperialist forces and the Grenadian people, one thing can be said with certainty. While it may be possible for Washington to roll back the Grenada Revolution for a time, it cannot erase from history the example and rich lessons of the past 4 years. The workers and farmers government brought to power by the Grenadian people remains one of the 3 giants of the Caribbean for revolutionary-minded working people throughout the Americas and the world. Nor can the imperialists sweep away the contribution made by Maurice Bishop and the New Jewel movement to the process of constructing a new, international revolutionary leadership of the working class and its allies. Bishop, the other slain NJM leaders, and those Grenadians who fell October 19 and are falling today in defense of their country's sovereignty, they join the ranks of martyrs of the international working class movement. Right now, the best tribute we can pay them is to turn our efforts to mobilizing the broadest possible opposition to the U.S. occupation of their homeland and to Washington's efforts to use this criminal invasion to bring closer the direct use of U.S. military power to halt the advance of the socialist revolution in Nicaragua, El Salvador, and throughout the Caribbean and Central America.